Firefighters rushed to the scene to find the semi's load ablaze. Only quick action by its driver and a tow truck operator saved the valuable prime mover, which was towed clear. Exploding tyres and aerosol containers gave firefighters a fright as they attempted to douse the flaming cardboard bales. The load was reduced to a smouldering mass, but the battle was far from won. A strong wind threatened to fan sparks into tinder-dry bush. Extra water tankers and bushfire brigades were needed throughout the day to dampen any chance of reignition. And a lucky escape for two women in the Sudan after its brush with a loaded sand truck on the Nelson Bay Road at Saltash. The car was dragged along by the heavy vehicle before it was flung to the side of the road. Its driver suffered head and chest injuries and was taken by ambulance to the Mater Hospital in a stable condition. The passenger escaped with scratches.
The charged man, Richard Ricky Stevens, his jumper pulled over his head, was escorted into Dubbo Court, handcuffed to another prisoner on an unrelated matter. During a brief appearance, Stevens was charged with murdering Maitland teenager Stacey Lee Kirk in February 1984. Stacey Lee, who was then just 16 years old, disappeared at the Maitland show on February 14. Her body was found 2 days later under a tarpaulin. She'd been sexually assaulted and asphyxiated. Underwear was tied around her neck. The subsequent manhunt galvanised public attention and proved increasingly frustrating to police despite intensive inquiries. Police displayed the murdered girl's clothing in the hope that it would jog the memories of some of the hundreds of visitors to the show. Despite overwhelming public support, the inquiry eventually wound down. A $50,000 reward was never claimed. Stevens' solicitor did not seek bail at today's appearance, and he was remanded in custody to appear at Sydney Central Court tomorrow. It's believed many of Stacey Lee's surviving relatives are considering attending that court appearance. Stacey Lee's father, Trevor Kirk, was unavailable for comment today. However, it's understood he was in at Maitland Police Station early this morning. Meanwhile, news of the arrest has spread throughout the Maitland community among many people who say the killing directly affected their lives.
Well, I think people did talk about it because it's a tragic thing that someone of 16 or 17-year-old was killed.
Is it something that, one of those cases that you've thought about at all since then?
Well, yes, I have. I often wondered where the fellow was that did it.
I was only about 7 at the time and I couldn't go out. My mum wouldn't let me go out unless I was with her sort of thing and with one of my brothers or someone.
Meanwhile, police will soon begin the painstaking process of tracking down the many witnesses and informants who took part in the initial inquiries 7 years ago. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
The traditional workers' parade was the biggest seen in Newcastle in a decade, with the unionists, environmentalists and peace campaigners stretching for more than a kilometre along Hunter Street. With an election called just yesterday, it was timely for the workers to put the Greiner Liberal government on notice.
There's thousands of people that have lost their occupation since the Greiner government's been in.
The unionists conceded the federal Labor government was also to blame for workers' woes.
The Double Ds, Dave Simmons and Dave Colbert, got the ball rolling for the Tigers as they opened up a small gap in the first quarter. James Bullock was in everything for the Falcons and they led. And Colbert made it 28-all at the first change. Melbourne upped the tempo and shot out to a 9-point lead shortly after the resumption. Michael Johnson tried to rally his troops with some fine play, but Gay started to hit his straps. That pushed the Tigers' lead to 15 before the Falcons rallied temporarily through Al Green in the third term to take the lead. And then Dave Colbert found his range, and in a twinkling of an eye, the Tigers were out by 20 at the end of the third quarter. Everything the Falcons tried didn't come off, with the Tigers being able to convert on most occasions. Simmons put some nails in the Newcastle coffin with a couple of big slam dunks to thrill the crowd. Green was tireless in his work to try and get the Falcons going, whether it was with young Neil Turner or from way out. But the Tigers had too much, and Lenarden finished with a jam to secure the 5-point win.
Star-spangled banners fluttered at Civic Park to greet the Admiral. He took the salute of the Naval Association of Australia and veterans on the 49th anniversary of the Battle of the Coral Sea. There were few who could remember firsthand the desperate events off Australia's northeastern shores in May 1942. Pearl Harbor had been bombed and the heavily fortified Singapore had fallen to the Japanese. Invasion forces steamed into the South Pacific, intent on capturing Papua New Guinea and Australia. They were headed off in the Coral Sea by American and Australian ships, with torrid air battles fought from carriers. The opposing fleets never came within sight of one another. The cost was high. The Allies suffered heavier losses than the Japanese, but for the first time in the war, stopped the enemy advance. While the Battle of the Coral Sea has been consigned to history, the military cooperation between Australia and the US prevails, most recently with Australia's Gulf War involvement.
The bonds between our nations are deep. Our partnership goes beyond international legal norms because it has been consecrated by blood of thousands of Australians and Americans spilled while fighting for peace and freedom.
A call went out over the airwaves for children and their parents to see the friendly face of the law. They were there by the truckload, eager to be where some wouldn't dare, queuing for a breath test, a chance to get behind the wheel of a patrol car, or collar a free hot dog put on by the local neighbourhood watch. The emphasis of the day was on child safety and community policing. Meanwhile, students and teachers, past and present, celebrated the Awabba Public School centenary this weekend. The school has been the focal point for the small township, its history preserved in a new book. But the whistle of the headmaster's cane serves as a more poignant reminder to others.
Some of the boys was naughty, but he too soon took the naughtiness out of them. They did what they were told, not like today.
It was on from the outset with Mike Reid nailing Mike Varnum with a solid tackle, and that pair were to feature in plenty of drama later in the match. And South, after sustained pressure, finally cracked the west line with Tim Butler the try scorer. Just before the break, the Rosellas hit back when Neil Baker slipped a beaut pass to Reid and he crossed in the corner. Ahead 8-6 at half-time, South swung into top gear to quickly put the match beyond doubt. Ford was instrumental in a fabulous solo try and the Lions led by 6. 2 minutes later, the try of the day, as South again opened up the west defence through Darren Wood, and he carried the ball to halfway. Got a sensational pass back inside to Greg Campbell backing up, and he blitzed the opposition to sprint away and score a spectacular try. South were in again 4 minutes later, as Ford went the blind from the scrum base, out to Butler backing up, and he offloaded to Guy who was in, and South were up by 16. Ford snapped a neat field goal for the Lions, and then tragedy, as Reid's head collided with Varnum's headgear in a tackle, and both players hit the deck. Varnum recovered, but Reid has been taken to hospital with a severely broken jaw and will be out of action for months. West did score a consolation try as Dodds got a pass to Baker, and he found Tim Morrison on the boil out wide, and the flanker accepted the pass, and he was in the corner to give the scoreboard some respectability.
Fiona was guest speaker at Newcastle Rotary's weekly meeting, reinforcing the message that proper diet and exercise are vital to a long, healthy life. Her credentials are impeccable, thrust into the limelight as a teenager, with 2 transplants back in the mid-80s after a virus irreparably damaged her own heart. But Fiona's case, while not unique, was different. Most heart disease is self-inflicted, little by little, throughout a person's lifetime.
I guess what we need to do is take steps each day to make sure we don't end up needing bypasses or coronary artery grafts. So the easiest way to do that is actually do a little bit of exercise each day and to watch our diet. So cut down on the fat intake, the salt intake, and to stop smoking. So it's pretty easy, really.
Easier said than done, though, it seems, because heart disease accounts for 46% of all deaths. Fiona Coote's vivacity should be an inspiration to all that debilitating disease can be beaten. With lifelong medication and yearly checkups, for her there is no choice.
The only thing I don't like is the actual checkups. The medication doesn't bother me at all, but I guess it's a small price to pay.
I thought she revealed a lot of interesting aspects of her life and her relationships, and I thought it was very brave.
Police patrolling Derby Street arrested a man at gunpoint just before midday, less than a kilometre from the scene of a bank robbery at the Junction shopping centre. The arrest was over in seconds in front of dozens of astonished onlookers.
The first thing I seen was the police van pulling up outside of the shop and one constable giving chase on foot around the corner of the shop and closely followed by the second officer. When I stepped outside the shop and looked around, they had him tackled in the middle of the street and guns were drawn.
Believing the man may have been armed, police were taking no chances. The street drama followed reports of an armed hold-up at the National Australia Bank in the Junction at about 11:45. Bank staff told police a man burst into the building brandishing what appeared to be a pistol. He fled on foot with a large quantity of cash. Police say the speed of the arrest was partly due to the coolness of bank staff who were able to give police a good description of the gunman, which was then circulated to patrolling cars within minutes of the robbery. Moments later, police on Derby Street spotted a man matching that description.
He took off the minute he saw us and down the road there, and I called on him to stop and he hit the ground straight away.
During the arrest, police recovered a quantity of cash apparently stuffed under the man's shirt. He was taken to Newcastle Police Station for further questioning by the armed hold-up squad. In the meantime, a search is continuing for a handgun which police believe may have been thrown into a stormwater drain in the Junction area. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
The opening minutes were pretty ordinary, but then South's captain coach Richard Jones gave a sensational ball to Trevor Crowe and he scored under the posts. 3 minutes later, Darren Ford got involved, gave a great pass to fullback Guy and he'd try to get his pass back inside, but Warden was there to save the Tars. The signs were there that South went far away from their second try and Mikowski socked off the ground from the play of the ball. Ford was there to pounce on the loose ball and a miraculous 4-pointer had been scored. And just before the break, an identical try to last week, as Woods made an incisive run from deep in his own half, found winger Campbell trailing him through, and Woods' pass to Campbell was a beauty, and the winger was away. Handler chased in vain, and finally caught Campbell right on the line, but he couldn't hang on, and Campbell had given South an unbeatable half-time lead of 18-0. The second half was full of defence, and outside of a penalty to Winkler, the only real interest came in a reasonable Donnybrook between the forwards, and the result was that Warden and Rouse headed for the sin bin to cool their heels. Australia opened brilliantly and Wendy Barlow got them on the board from the opening moments of the first test between the arch rivals. Again and again the Aussies attacked with plenty of reward, and it was only the good defence of the Kiwis that turned the match around. Lani Gillan began the comeback for New Zealand, and at the end of the first chukker the Kiwis had got their noses in front 4-3. Play seesawed from end to end in the second period of play, with New Zealand holding a 2-goal lead. From that chukker on, the defence of both teams was exceptional, with the Aussies levelling at 6-all. New Zealand went 1 goal up in the fourth chukker and were able to maintain that 1-goal advantage to the end, leading 7-6 after 4, 9-8 at the end of 5, 10-9 at the completion of the sixth chukker, 13-12 on 7, and both teams scored 1 goal each in the final chukker for a final scoreline of New Zealand 14, Australia 13.
It was a relieved Peter Collins who opened the Terrigal ambulance station. Just 2 weeks ago, officers were threatening to boycott the site, following a decision to relocate the 11 staff originally assigned here to Sydney and move their replacements from nearby Batto Bay.
Everybody knows there's a state election on, and everybody's trying to make a point one way or another. The key thing is we've got this station opened. It was something that we promised in the immediate lead up to the last election. So we've got both Terrigal and Batto Bay ambulance stations open.
The Batto Bay station was officially opened later in the day as the Health Minister delivered some pleasant tasting medicine to the area. He revealed plans for 120 new beds at the Gosford Hospital, double the 60 he had previously promised, and for 100 extra beds at Wyong. The good news arrived at a convenient time for local Liberal members like Chris Harcher, whose seat of Gosford is seen as a vital one, but the Minister denied he was pork-barrelling.
Well, look, politics is about making promises that you know you can deliver, and that's what we did.
The politics of healthcare was forgotten for a moment during the Terrigal ceremony when friends and relatives of Elma Johns planted a tree to recognise the years of work she had dedicated to convincing authorities of the need for a Terrigal station. Unfortunately, Mrs Johns died late last year.
She'd have been delighted, I'm sure. She worked very hard, and she and Mary Macy hassled the ministers and the local radio station until they got what they wanted.
Bruce Mackenzie, NBN News. The alarm was raised by a passing motorist just after 2 o'clock this morning. Neighbours had slept through the blaze and may have been in danger if it weren't for the man's prompt action. He quickly contacted the authorities, but by the time firefighters arrived, there was little they could do to save the 2-storey house. No one was in the house at the time of the fire. Its owners live at Soldiers Point. The brick and plank building took more than an hour to extinguish. Efforts to save the premises were hampered by the imminent collapse of the top floor, and firefighters could do little but ensure the blaze didn't spread to the adjoining houses. Investigators from Sydney were called to the scene, and at this stage it's thought an electrical fault may have sparked the flames. If the Bayer Company does have an image problem in Wyong, this could be the remedy. Tired of being painted as an environmental ogre by groups such as the Central Coast Against Chemicals, the company has decided to launch its new open door policy via this high-profile shopfront.
Everybody is invited to have a look into our plant. Everybody who has got concern should come to this information centre or to myself and phone me and raise a concern so that it can be sorted out.
Late last month, the company came under fire from the CCAC, which claimed it had a licence to pollute the wetlands adjacent to its Wyong plant. The company says no trace of the pesticides it now produces has ever been found in the wetlands. Some organochlorines used by the plant's previous owner have been detected, but Bayer says the levels were so small as to be insignificant.
There is no contamination problem in the wetlands as far as our current produced pesticides are concerned.
The Shopfront Information Centre will remain open for the next 4 weeks, while the EIS will be available for inspection for the next 3 months. There was a confident air in the Falcons camp today as the boys attacked their training drills with ring-shaking enthusiasm. The players know they have a heap of hard work to do if they're to recover from last week's drubbing at the hands of Eastside in time to snatch a win on the road against Illawarra. The game will be a vital one. The Falcons must win and keep on winning if they're to stay in touch with the playoff contenders.
One team is one game in front of us, a team in 7 spots, one game in front, and they're one game out of the final. So, you know, it's still wide open at the moment, but you've got to sooner or later win 5 or 6 in a row, and we haven't shown that we can do that yet.
This week's assignment will be tough enough. The Spectres went to the Snake Pit full of confidence after crushing the Falcons. They left on the wrong end of a 123-108 scoreline. The absence of Hawks playmaker Greg Hubbard should leave some holes in the Illawarra backcourt, but it will take total domination to earn a win in front of the rabid Wollongong crowd.
What's very important for us is we don't concentrate on 1 or 2 individuals and we get back to a full team concept. I think that's what's been hurting us the last couple of weeks. And we've been working on that in practice this week, and it's been looking a lot better.
The Illawarra camp is confident the club has turned the corner after notching its first win of the season, but coach David Lindstrom is wary of the Falcons' firepower.
They match up with us pretty well. We usually have some problems matching up with them. I'm confident that we'll win the game, but I know we're going to have to come in and play well.